screen recording this video of the PowerPoint presentation that I want to give you of an article overview of the Nicholas Carr piece that you read for today, Is Google Making Us Stupid? So let's get started. What I have here is an image of Carr's thesis statement, his main assertion in this piece. It happens pretty early in the essay, I think maybe on the second page, and I have it circled. What Carr writes is, what the net seems to be doing is chipping away my capacity for concentration and contemplation. And you'll notice in this picture, I do a lot of annotating when I'm reading. So if you look over to the right, I wrote out in the margin thesis and I bracketed it so I could go back and find it later. That can be a really helpful strategy that you can use as you continue to do the reading in this course. The English professor in me was very happy when I saw that Carr reiterated his thesis at the end of his essay. So he uses that framing device that I've talked about in class before. His reiterated thesis is the very last sentence of his article, very last part of the very last sentence of his article. As we come to rely on computers to mediate our understanding of the world, it is our own intelligence that flattens into artificial intelligence. Now what I wanted to show you is my own paraphrase of Carr's thesis, because it's always a really good idea to see if you can rewrite a writer's main ideas in your own language and sentence structure. That shows that you've comprehended it. So here's my paraphrase. Carr asserts that society's increasing reliance on technological tools such as computers and the internet is weakening our cognitive function, undermining our ability to think deeply. And you'll notice that I put the in-text citation there, and the reason that I did that is because even though I'm putting Carr's ideas in my own words, they are still Carr's ideas and not my ideas. So even though I've written them in my own words and there are no quotation marks in this sentence, I have the in-text citation because I'm borrowing the ideas basically from Carr. So the question that I want to ask you is, why is Carr a trustworthy source on this particular topic? What are his credentials? Well, if you look at the headnote, you'll see that he's a blogger. He's published 3 books, and that was at the time that this anthology came out, or actually when the article came out. I think that since that article came out, he published at least one other book. I feel pretty sure that it was a New York Times bestseller, but he also, he's published multiple books. And then he's also contributed to various periodicals. And what that tells us, it's one thing for a person to be a blogger. Nobody knows whether anybody's reading a blog, but if he's contributing to periodicals, and if those periodicals are well respected, then what that means is publishers are inviting him to talk about a topic, to write about a topic, which means he's knowledgeable. So for those reasons, I think that we can consider him a reliable source. We also know that the focus of most of his writing, and I pulled this from the author headnote, is technology, business, and culture. So he writes a lot about the subject that he's discussing in this particular article. But my question is, do we consider him to be the highest level expert? And I'm going to say that he's a very trustworthy source for all of the reasons that I've mentioned above. But he's not a high-level expert. He doesn't have a PhD in technology. So how does somebody like Nicholas Carr go about writing an article, getting it published, not just in a journal, but then reappearing in an anthology that countless poor freshman comp students, or lucky freshman comp students, depending on how you look at it, that countless students and readers are encountering for well over a decade now? Well, the way that he does that is he builds a credible argument. So what he does is he uses ethos and he uses logos Ethos is maintaining a trustworthy identity, as he writes, and logos is using lots of logic and reliable, trustworthy logic in his argument. So the way that he accomplishes that is by giving lots of evidence, plenty of examples, and also including information and conversations that he gained by consulting experts. And I don't know if you noticed, but this particular essay, it was a little longer than what we've read before. It was about 13 pages. But what I have here are bullet points. I just went through his article and made a list of all the different evidence, examples, and experts that he includes in this particular essay. So in 13 pages of an article, he manages to pack in at least 18 different pieces of evidence. And I think that's pretty remarkable. But he doesn't just include a lot of evidence. The kind of evidence that he uses, the types of sources, and the range of sources that he uses also continue to reinforce his reliability, the logic of his essay, and his trustworthiness as a reasonable voice on the topic. So here are the types of evidence, examples, and experts that he includes. He includes personal experience, and this is where you also get a lot of pathos, which is an appeal to emotion. We can identify with and maybe sometimes experience some of the same feelings that Carr describes when he talks about the changes in his own experiences of reading in this article. So personal experience is an excellent way to build an argument, but Carr goes way beyond that. He appeals to examples that come from the pop culture, a movie that came out in the late 20th century, and also he appeals to the ideas or includes the ideas of a current day playwright. He also uses information from field experts. These are people who are very knowledgeable in the field of technology. And some of them are knowledgeable because they publish a journal that focuses on this particular subject, somebody like Clive Thompson. Some of these people are experts because they do research. Some of these people are experts because they guide the writing of others on this topic. And then the Google founders are, of course, field experts because they work and are kind of top-notch executives in the field about which Carr is writing in his essay. But he doesn't just talk to field experts. He also includes information from various scholars. These are people with high-level degrees like Bruce Friedman, Marianne Wolf, and Daniel Bell. These are people who are scholars, PhDs in a range of fields, but he also cites a scholarly study that was done at the University College of London. But that's not all. I feel like a Ronco commercial. He also includes examples and ideas from thinkers and writers from other centuries and other countries. People from the turn of the century, people from the day of Socrates, people from the 1400s, Germans, Brits, Americans, Europeans, Italians. So he includes thinkers from all different parts of the world and a range of historical eras. So in that way, he really builds a very diversified set of support for his article. Now I want to close this by saying one thing that I agree with in Carr's piece and then one idea with which I disagree. So here's the sentence I wrote that states an idea with which I agree. Carr is correct in pointing out that people who rely too heavily on technology risk spreading themselves too wide and thin. Here's how I disagree with Carr. Since humans have the wisdom and the will to resist the negative pull of technology, this phenomenon that Carr discusses, the phenomenon of our intellectual capacity kind of being diminished because of our reliance on technology, that doesn't have to be inevitable. And I think that Carr doesn't really give enough attention to that idea. I'll close this presentation with an image. This is an illustration that appears in the online version of the article in The Atlantic. And you'll notice that at the bottom of this page I included the URL where I found this image. And you'll see that it looks like at first glance a policeman who's giving a traffic ticket, but you can only see one car. That's the cop car. And when you look at the car, you see that he's not a traffic cop, but he is part of the Internet Patrol. And it looks like he's patrolling movement along the information highway. And this poor man who's getting a ticket is getting a ticket not because he was going too fast, but because he was moving along the information highway too slow. And the reason for that seems to be because he was getting information not from fast technology like the internet or some other kind of device, but instead by a very classic old device known as a book. So you might do some thinking about why this illustration is a particularly appropriate illustration for Nicholas Carr's article.